Hi, Professor Craig and rest of 502. I did my book report on Reign of Error, the Hoax of the Privatization Movement and the Danger to America's Public Schools by Diane Radfitch. Before I go any further, I just want to make everybody known that this book is very political in nature, so just please understand that it deals with politics, and politics can be a very, touchy subject for some people. So, just letting you all know, because I don't want anyone to get, offended by anything that she says or anything of that nature. So I just wanted to give the heads up for that. Okay. Let's start with the author, a little about her. Her education deals with she was a graduate of Wesley College, and she attended Columbia University, where she earned her PhD. I found that to be pretty impressive. Her experience is that she served as the Assistant Secretary of Education from 1991 to 1993. Okay. Let's get into a little about what she writes about. She basically discusses how over the last number of years there's been, I don't want to say opposition to public schools, but a lot of criticism to them, in the sense that they talk about how, they're broken, or the children aren't learning, and they say that, they're not being held accountable, and that there are claims that test scores are low, children are dropping out of high school at an alarming rate. She goes on to discuss those ideas and counterbalance them, or try to debunk them. She's opposed to school choice, opposed to charter schools, opposed to standardized testing, and she's opposed to merit pay for teachers. She doesn't deny the fact that public schools, there are problems. She says, yes, they have issues today, but, she doesn't believe that they should be completely dismantled and done away with privatized efforts. She goes on to discuss the real problems as she sees it, as poverty and racial segregation, which at first, that last one, I didn't really understand what she meant, because, our schools have been desegregated. Segregation in schools ended, a long time ago. But, as she goes to talk about that, what she means is that how there haven't been more integration efforts among students, and then how you see, for example, like schools where they're, largely, black and Hispanic, and then there are schools where the students are just white. Not that they're, that was mandated, just ended up that way. So she views that as, a failure of integration. Okay, let's go a little further. She actually talks about the two previous administrations. She talks about how during President Bush's time in office, how he led to the No Child Left Behind Act being passed, and she opposed that because it put so much emphasis on standardized testing that it led to the exclusion of other subjects, and time being spent on them, such as, English, social studies, phys ed, art, music. And, she's right. It is true. That has been a real criticism of that. And that, teachers have been blamed for, bad marks on standardized tests, because another thing No Child Left Behind has led to is just, teaching to the test, which is really unfortunate. She also mentions, race to the top. Race to the top, she's opposed that because, as I mentioned previously, she's opposed to merit pay, and, for teachers, which I'll get into that in a second, but race to the top is something that highly emphasized that. So naturally she was against that. Okay, and she talks about the privatization movement of education in the United States. Her one of her issues with that is that a number of those people, not all of them, but a number of them who have been leading this movement. They themselves either have no background in it, or they're so far removed from their experience in the education field that they've forgotten what it was like to be a teacher, or they've forgotten what it was like, or they've forgotten, I should say, they've forgotten what the purpose of a school and education is altogether. And I can understand that to a point. Some of the people she's mentioned, I can see that. She's saying the people who have been pushing for this are, very wealthy individuals, people you would find working on Wall Street, organizations that, have a hidden agenda, so to speak. She mentions the American Legislative Exchange Council, which she talks about. Now, just who are these individuals? Who are they? Now, here's a few of them. Okay, we all know who Bill Gates is. He's been, he's the head of Microsoft, CEO. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world. The next man is Arne Duncan. He was the Secretary of Education from 2009 to 2015. So, that's where I can kind of see what she's saying about how, this is someone who was in that field or that area of work, but they became so far detached from it. And another person is Joel Klein. Joel Klein actually was a superintendent of the school system in New York City, and he was also an attorney as well. So, I get what she's saying about how, calling out these individuals, because I have also seen that myself before, where when you get so big and so far on the top of something, of an organization, or just, whatever you're doing in life, there is a tendency of people to forget, where they came from, or what they're representing, and what the real purpose of it is. So I get what she's saying there, and she does make some good points. Okay. Now, as I said before, she, is opposed to charter schools and school choice because, as she sees it, they create competition between themselves, which I don't really see how that's such a bad thing, to be honest. She says education isn't meant to be something that the market deals with. She believes it's something that it's just supposed to be a social public service for children and that everyone's entitled to. She also makes the claim that charter schools, they're not designed, or they're not able to assist students with disabilities, which she also says that's, one of the reasons why they claim that they've been doing so well is because they have only been dealing with students that, don't have, personal issues going on. They don't have, like a learning disability, or, they can speak English well, so they're not dealing with students who don't have issues. So that's what she claims. She's opposed to merit pay because she believes that it's been tried in the past and it's, it hasn't had any effect. It's just any rise with test scores or dropping them, there's no correlation or causation between either of them. And she believes merit pay just creates an environment where, teachers are just going to fight. Well, I shouldn't say fight, but compete against each other as opposed to working together. And she believes that that's an opposite of what a school is supposed to do. When she responds to her critics, the critics of public education, she says, look, not only are public schools, who have a large number of students who perform for a variety of reasons. She says, look, the reasons who underperform, I should say, it's because, some may not speak English, some are living in poverty, some are learning disabled. So, that's going to affect, school's performance. So she makes a good point about that. And she's not wrong. She's right. Okay. She goes on to counter the claim that test scores, they're at an all-time low by citing some information from the National Assessment of Education Progress. She looked at test scores going back to 1992, and she shows how they've actually been going up in reading and math, and they've actually are now at their very highest they've ever been. And she makes the point that, in terms of dropout, she says, well, look how many people are going to college now. She makes a really good point. More people have a college degree now than ever. A college education is now more achievable than it's ever been before. So she makes those well thought out, points. Now, what does she actually talk about how to fix any issues that public schools have? Well, the first thing she talks about is reduced class size. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think we can all agree with that. Eliminate standardized tests and replace them with diagnostic tests to see what areas a child is weak in. Yeah, I'm all for that too. Public schools should be controlled by an elected school board. I suppose I think that's something that needs to be more discussed about. Talked about, because, I don't know, I'd have to think about that. Ban for-profit charters and ensure charter schools collaborate with public schools. I don't know about that. I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel that, while she's defending the public school system, I think that she has also been, a little unfairly attacking the privatization of the privatized system in the United States, and I think she does go a little overboard with that. So I don't agree with that personally. Make sure every school has a full range of subjects to be taught. Going back to the whole, because of standardized testing, unfortunately, you've seen other subjects, as I mentioned, social studies, English, phys ed, art, music, they've had, there's been less emphasis put on them. So I do agree that, an education should be a well-rounded education, for everyone who's going for it. So I think that that's important. It's not just one thing that matters. Yes, math and science are very important, but so is everything else. So is knowing your history, knowing who you are, where you came from, so you can be a better citizen, and, someday when you go to vote and, take part in your local issues, whether it's on your local, state, or federal level, 6, provide medical and social services to poor kids. Okay, I understand that, but, that's something else so that I think is a little outside of a school system to do. I don't think the Department of Education can do everything. So I think that maybe, I'm not saying that she's not making valid points, but I just think that there are also then other, parts of society or your government that you need to go address this to. So, all in all, they're not bad suggestions, but I just think that they need to be thought out a little bit better. She goes on to compare the United States to Finland. Finland, hey, it's a great country, and they're doing well, but, she has to also remember that only 5% of children over there live in poverty as opposed to 23% here. So, it's hard to compare and contrast two countries when you're dealing with that. Overall, I think this book was pretty good, and I definitely would recommend it for those who are interested in politics and just your current day-to-day life in the United States.